Hello, boxing fans. We're here with another news update. I'm Kurt Ward and I'm joined by Paul Webb and Alex Morris. We're going to be discussing the excuses. There's a lot of them from Manny Pacquiao and Bob Arum and Freddie Roach about his loss to Floyd Mayweather, and also calls for a rematch. With today, apparently Floyd saying he'd be up for the rematch. I mean, why wouldn't he? It's an easy fight again, I suppose, for another huge payday. Paul, first of all, what do you make of Manny's excuses? I mean, his injury does look legit, but should he chose to fight? My opinion is he should just keep stum about it.
Yeah, I mean, boxing's a sport where injuries are a disaster because the minute one of the two main event fighters is injured, you lose your main event. So I can completely understand the mentality of why he wanted to carry on fighting in the same way that Darren Barker took the fight with Felix Sturm, knowing that he was in no physical shape to compete. The problem is when he's been telling us for months and months that how he's going to win, how he's got God on his side, and how he's going to do this and going to do that. If what they're saying is true, he stepped into that ring knowing that his performance would be nowhere near the level that it could be if he was fit. And if it
Apparently,
was,
only 60%. He said.
yeah, so 60%. So he knew about this injury several weeks ago. And I've watched the fight back again this afternoon, actually, after you rescored it. And it's quite obvious that Mayweather was aware of this injury. The amount of times you see Mayweather tugging it, there's one really obvious moment where he pulls on Manny's arm and he knows that there's obviously a problem. So this wasn't obviously a secret in the camps. They knew it was going on, but they decided, you know what? Forget making this the best spectacle possible. Forget making this the most even it could possibly be. Let's just take the money because that's what boxing at this level is all about. Take the money, make the fight, and then after it, when he loses, which I think he would have lost anyway, he's now got a ready-made excuse. Well, my arm was injured, so let's do it again in a rematch. It doesn't wash with me at all. I think if you take the fight, that means that you're accepting that this is the best you can be for that event. If not, pull out. If they'd have postponed this, yes, a lot of people would have been disappointed. But to compare it to the David Hay Klitschko incident, I drove out for that. I spent hundreds of pounds going to that event. Would I have been annoyed if it had cost me a little bit of money if it was delayed several weeks for his toe injury? No, because at least I know that I'm seeing two men compete at that level. Fighters always carry little injuries into fights, but this isn't a little injury. This is a major one, and he's done a disservice to his fans, to people buying at home, and especially as the fight was so, I'm not going to say so poor, but lacked such drama for casual fans. Now they're going to find out that the guy they were all supporting wasn't even fit to be there in the first place, and I think it's wrong.
Well, yeah, and there's two issues I want to bring up as well. I mean, you got this first one is a well-known one. When Tommy Hearns fought Marvin Hagler, he broke his hand in the first round. He landed an uppercut and he broke his hand, and he had to go to hospital afterwards. But he told Emmanuel Stewart, his trainer, "Don't put it out there. I don't want to take any credit away from Marvin Hagler for his performance." And it was only when Emmanuel Stewart, put it out there 25 years later that people finally realised that Hearns' hand injury, could have played a major issue in him losing the fight. And also, you got another fight involving Manny Pacquiao was Joshua Clottey, who turned up and I called him the black statue after that fight because he just stood there all fight. Afterwards, he said he had a dodgy stew and he had diarrhea and he couldn't perform. Nobody cared about, nobody cared about that excuse because, once you accept that you're not going to be 100%, but you're still going ahead with the fight, then there can't be any excuses. And I think, it's just Pacquiao has got a very strong fan base, and they're like cult like, and they won't accept anything. And if this was the other way around, they wouldn't be happy. But like I said, when an opponent of his made an excuse, no one bothered with it. And I just think for this time they've got to say, you decided to go through with it, and I think they should be angry at Pacquiao for going ahead with it because there's a lot of fans who spent a lot of money to go there to support him. And his statement, he said he didn't want to disappoint the fans. Well, turning up at only 60% against the best boxer of our generation, he's doing exactly that, isn't it, Alex?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, a lot of people are making the excuse that, they would have gone ahead with the fight anyway because, the fight probably wouldn't have been rescheduled if that fell through then because of a shoulder injury or any type of injury. If Mayweather pulled out, if Pacquiao pulled out, that fight probably wouldn't have been rescheduled, because we knew the heartbreak and the struggle and the sweat and the blood and the tears that went into negotiating that fight. And you can argue that that fight would not have been rescheduled. So Pacquiao perhaps was forced into the fight. But then, he's in no right, or has no entitlement to blame his loss on, on the shoulder injury. He still went ahead with it. He poised all of his pride on that shoulder injury, and now he's just making an excuse out of it, and that's what it is, an excuse. He went in there, he agreed to it. He did not disclose the injury to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, which apparently I thought he did, and he said he did immediately after the fight, which is what confused me. That he was trying to put the blame on them by their saying they didn't supply him with a general anesthetic, or sorry, a local anesthetic, in lidocaine, and he's blaming it on them. But now news have come out that he never disclosed this, and he could be facing perjury charges for not disclosing the fact that he had this shoulder injury. So it's either that he was withholding it so that the fight wouldn't be cut off, or called off rather by Nevada State Athletic Commission, or he was holding it back simply as a ready-made excuse, and that's what it seems to be, and that's what it's coming across as. He's saying, "Oh, I've got a bad shoulder, I've got all these other things as well, these little niggles, and I only fought at 60 pounds." He's just let the fans down. It's absolutely just a travesty, and I was saying it before that it's most disappointing to someone like me as a Pacquiao fan, because it puts these little niggles in my mind. It puts these little doubts in my head that, oh, maybe he was hurt. Maybe, I'll watch the fight again. Maybe, oh, he's not using that hand right. He's not throwing enough punches right. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he'll win a rematch. And I don't want a rematch, because that was his chance. And he took that chance. If he didn't want to fight with that injury, then he shouldn't have fought. You can't blame the injury afterwards. It's pathetic, and it's embarrassing for him, and it's embarrassing for me as a fan for him to think that this once great warrior, this once great legend, is now acting like this after the biggest fight of his career. It's embarrassing.
It would have been nice even if Freddie Roach or Bob Arum was coming out and saying this, and Pacquiao was downplaying it and saying, "No, I'm just giving credit to Floyd." Then no one could say anything. But he's going along with it. Again, he's probably after the rematch as well. Obviously, and a cash out money fight for him. Why fight someone like a Terence Crawford when you can get another rematch with Mayweather? And he's not going to get badly beat up. He's not going to have a busted up face. He's going to lose by being out jabbed and moved around the ring like he was on Saturday. But it's just a shame to see all these excuses. I put out a tweet earlier and I said, I can't believe I'm seeing so many people, defending Pacquiao when nobody defended David Haye. I mean, I know Pacquiao has been in some great fights. He's looked upon as a good guy outside the ring, but both of those guys, talked in the build-up. Their fights with Klitschko and Mayweather, respectively, were built up, for years. And when they finally stepped in the ring, they got beat comfortably. And then instead of giving credit to the other guy in the corner, they just blame an injury. I mean, Paula, it just looks like sour grapes.
It's massive sour grapes. They've been building this fight up for 6 years. He had his opportunity, he had his chance, and he didn't deliver. And I think that he did. I mean, I came out of the fight after watching the fight, and I wasn't critical of him, because I just sort of said, well, he did what he normally does, or normally tried to do. But whereas normally he's able to catch fighters coming in this case, Mayweather was just circling off the ropes and getting away from him. Pacquiao was getting very frustrated, and I wasn't critical of Pacquiao because I think Mayweather is just that good. I think Mayweather would have beaten Pacquiao at any year, any month, however fit Manny Pacquiao was or isn't. The frustration now is that it's trying to again take credit away from something that Floyd's done. Now, like I said, we can all dislike Floyd for who he is and his personality outside the ring, but Floyd Mayweather was fantastic on Saturday night. He beat Pacquiao by throwing two shots, a left jab and a right hand. You could say that Mayweather fought one-handed because he never threw a power left hand, never threw a left hook. He beat him that easily. And again, it's just a case of saying, well, now, do you know what? Maybe actually if Pacquiao was fit and in a few months' time, Mayweather would be a bit older. And again, but things, if I'm Floyd Mayweather, who, if he was looking at it from a legacy record point of view, he'd say, okay, well, I want the next challenge in September now. I want to fight Khan or Garcia or whoever. But he's Floyd Mayweather, the money guy. And when they get the pay-per-view numbers in next week and they see the insane amount of money. I mean, like I said, there's so much about this event which was just actually it's really weird. I was talking to my mum about it earlier, and we were just talking about the money that was involved, and she just said, "Oh, it's disgusting, isn't it?" And I actually sort of agreed. The amount of money that was involved in this whole event was crazy, and the fact that the only reason we'd see a rematch is not because it's justified; it's because it gives the chance for both fighters to earn a huge amount of money. I mean, Robert Guerrero didn't get a rematch, and that fight was as one-sided as the Guerrero fight, in my opinion. Alvarez didn't get a rematch. Similar, they were both very wide on the scores. The only reason Madonna got one and Castillo got one was because the fights were so close. There was no justification in any stretch or any way for a rematch in this fight. And if they really think that people will get really hyped up for it, it won't be a tenth of what we saw on Saturday because we've already seen it once. We already know the outcome.
It echoes the Klitschko Hay fight for me. I mean, it's built up. One guy loses comfortably, blames the injury, and then they say they want a rematch. I mean, you had your chance. I mean, if you want a rematch, you're gonna have to go out and do something special to make people care again. I just don't see Pacquiao at this age now having obviously much time left now because he's probably going to want maybe one big fight and then he's going to go away. And Mayweather's obviously not far behind him, and it's just a shame that after all the hype and the build up, we said on the pod, we hope it's no matter what happens, we hope it's a good fight. And sadly, it wasn't the greatest fight, although it was to be expected, I suppose, with Mayweather being in control, and it was never going to be a Castillo Corrales, but it's now been hampered by all these excuses afterwards, and Floyd's not getting his credit. The fact is, Pacquiao, if you look at Mayweather as the best fighter of the generation, Pacquiao's right up there. Maybe second. He's right up there. Mayweather totally neutralised him and stopped him from having an output at all. And that's not because Pacquiao had an injured shoulder. That's because he just couldn't get close enough to do much. And I just don't see what would happen in a rematch. To be honest, I mean, Alex, do you think if a rematch happened, maybe next May, that they'd still do great numbers for it?
It wouldn't be nowhere near what the numbers that they're going to do now. I mean, some people are reporting things like 4 million, maybe. I mean, that's obviously quite a big stretch to reach 4 million, but it's possible that this fight did that, but the next fight certainly won't even come close to that. I mean, the fact that they're both so well known to the boxing public is obviously a big start and a big help to selling the pay-per-view, and that's ultimately what you do, or what you need rather, to sell a pay-per-view, is just the public knowing about it and the public thinking that it's going to be a competitive fight. Usually in the promotion of other fights, when it's Floyd Mayweather versus Maidana or Guerrero, they have to work really hard on building up the opponent because no one's heard of Guerrero or Maidana or Victor Ortiz. So they need to really work up. But this time they don't need to do that. They could spend all of their efforts on building up the fact that Manny was injured the first time round, and then maybe if Manny beats someone in the interim, saying, "Oh, look how well Manny did in the interim against this fighter. Look how bad Floyd did against blah 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 in September." That's what they ultimately need to do if they want to sell it. But it's not going to do anywhere near the whatever this is going to be, 3 or 4 million, which seems to be the most likeliest. Touching on another point, actually, that you know if Manny were to, just hypothetically, if he was to possibly earn a rematch, what do you think he would have to do to, really, in our eyes, earn a rematch to a point where we say, actually, we want to see Manny fight Floyd Mayweather again? I know we're going to be seeing both fighters retiring soon, or at least Floyd's probably going to retire either in September or next May when he reaches 49 or 50. NO rather, but say that they've got a few years left in them. What would Manny have to do, and who would he have to beat to say, actually, yeah, I want to see that rematch?
Well, they're already talking about dropping down to face Terence Crawford next. So I mean, he's obviously a good up and coming fighter who's looking good. But even if he performs good against him, I mean, I just don't see what he can do, to be honest, to make people. Going into this fight, Manny was an underdog, but people still believe that he could at least trouble Floyd. I thought he would. I thought Floyd would win, but I thought he'd give him trouble, especially early. Now I saw that fight. The only way the rematch really works is if you are hinging it all on the injury. If you are believing the injury, was the reason he lost, then I suppose they could sell it. And I've always said, boxing with promoters, they can sell, anything. I mean, we've seen it over
Yeah,
here with Eddie Hearn.
exactly.
If he can sell value cleverly too and all the other nonsense, and they can sell what they sell over there, I mean, this fight won't do what it did like it did on Saturday. But even if it
It
didn't,
doesn't need to, does it?
it's still gonna do surely a huge amount because you've still got two fighters who are the biggest pay-per-view attractions in the world, and you know the money won't be the same, will it? Both fighters won't be getting the same. The anticipation
Well,
won't be the same, but
say it even only does say like 1.5 million, which is probably, a reasonable number to expect from these two fighting again. That's if they sell, $100 a pay-per-view again, that's $150 million. That's, it's a far cry from the 400 million also that this first one's supposed to be predicted to make, but 150 million split between, the two of them, and 10% for the rest of the people involved. That's a ridiculous amount of money. And to them, they'd be stupid not to, conspire to try and make that.
I know, but then again, it's like anything. It's like movies. If something works the first time, then there'll be a sequel, even if the sequel isn't really warranted. And this is to be the same case with this fight. I mean, I think you know what, boxing promoters and the people involved in this fight are brazen enough to try and sell this again as a
Yeah.
rematch. And I just hope it doesn't happen. I just think what I was that the whole build up to this fight and everything that's gone on with it, it's highlighted everything that's good about the sport and it's highlighted everything in every category you can imagine about what's wrong with the sport. And I was hoping that after Saturday night, like I said, I think the week before, we get a definitive winner, which it appeared that we had, and we could draw a line under it. And we were so close to that, or we felt like you were close to that. And then it comes to the last couple of days, and it's just clouded again. And we're still talking about this fight, and we're still talking about the if, buts, and whys, and the potential of a rematch. I said I didn't. I said I didn't want a rematch. I didn't want the fight to be close because I wanted it to be over. We've got so many good fighters at 147, and yes, from a pay-per-view massive draw, they may not be there, but we don't care about that. I don't care that Keith Thurman's not a pay-per-view draw. I care that he's a great fighter or potentially
Mm.
a very good fighter. Let's watch him have good fights. If Floyd gives up all his belts, which he's talked about doing, think of the amount of potential world title fights that could be made over the next 6-12 months at both 147 and 154. I'm bored. I don't want to hear about the two of them again. And if I do, I want it to be because Floyd Mayweather's fighting X fighter, and I think let's be honest, Bob Arum. He might act like he's Manny Pacquiao's best friend. Bob Arum is a business guy. At some point, Bob Arum is going to sell Manny Pacquiao, and I think that the
Oh
Terence
yeah.
Crawford fight is the fight that he sells him to because I think Terence Crawford has looked so good at the moment. We need to see how he carries on at 140. But I think Terence Crawford could beat Manny Pacquiao, and I think that's the fighter who Bob Arum will manoeuvre into position to beat him, and then that'll be the end of Manny Pacquiao. I don't. The idea of a rematch, of course, it sells. Like you say, even if it does a quarter of the numbers, it's still huge, and there is still that big casual interest from both fighters in both fighters. But I just don't want to see it at all.
But that's the thing with it, though, isn't it? I mean, first of all, that us hardcores really don't care about. Well, we care sort of, they're legends. We don't care about seeing. We ideally want Mayweather and Pacquiao gone so that the next wave and next generation of great fighters can start making their impact on the sport, and so we can see them. But casuals and the promoters and the business people want to keep them around as long as possible because that's their bread and butter. That's what's making them the most money, really. And what we see usually is an old legend passing the torch to a new legend, and like you say, Manny Pacquiao being sort of just pushed away and given fed to Terence Crawford almost would seem to be setting up Terence Crawford as the next pay-per-view star. Maybe even he'll try and set up a Manny Pacquiao Canelo fight as well. That has been talked about in the past. Canelo could obviously do the boost of fighting the second half of the greatest fighters of this generation. He obviously lost to Mayweather, but if he managed to beat Pacquiao, that could obviously set up the Mayweather rematch again for that one as well. You never know, and they've got these two fighters either side that they're trying to propel into really big stars, and Pacquiao seems ripe for the picking at the moment. Just like Oscar was when obviously Pacquiao beat him. He was.
yeah. And if Pacquiao is out for like 9 months, he's not the type who's going to be in, a warm up fight or a couple of warm up fights. He's going to have to be in a big fight. And if he's putting with Terence Crawford, next year, that could be, his perfect opportunity for Crawford to get the big win that might propel him, because obviously he's selling quite a few thousand tickets in Nebraska, and they're obviously hoping he can be the next big star, and he's obviously got all the talent. But like Floyd Mayweather, he needs that one big win like Floyd had against Oscar De La Hoya, and someone like Pacquiao, could be that guy. But then you look at Tim Bradley. We know officially he never got it, but he never really did much for his career, to be honest, even when he beat one Manuel. So I think with Crawford, he's got the fans back, and he's just got to need that big win to see if he can propel him even further.
Yeah, and I think that's what they'll look to do. And I think with Floyd's side, I mean, I'd have no issue. I know we talked about fair about Danny Garcia fight. I wouldn't have any issue if he chose to fight Garcia next, or if he chose to fight Khan, or any legitimate 147 or 154 pounder. I'm fine with, and then hopefully he retires in September. If Pacquiao is out for as long as he is, and the way he's talking about this arm, it's as though it's going to drop off tomorrow. So he could be out for up to a year. They keep talking about. So when he comes back, he'll be an old fighter, and I'm hoping that with that gap and with all the other fights that could be made, like I said, we can just get past this whole nonsense. However, I mean, someone just messaged me now saying, "Do you think this is all a big conspiracy from both sides to make the rematch?" And possible, yeah. I hope the public don't buy it. I hope for once boxing fans use their brains and think we're getting sold something stupid here. Let's not bother. But we've bought stupider fights for less. So
Stick to our motto, Team Stream.
exactly.
Team Stream.
I'd like to thank Paul Webb, Alex Morris. I've been your host, Kurt Ward. Please leave any comments, and if you disagree with us, which you probably will, leave them in below. Thanks.